So, Season of the Splicer. Couple of days in. I said that I felt like Season 14 was going to feel an awfully lot like Season 13 did because of how good Season 13 ended up being in comparison to previous seasons, and because Bungie probably knew that it was going to be well received, thus modeling Season 14 after Season 13. So far, that is pretty much spot on. So let's talk about it. Spoilers for literally everything. Before we get into anything though, we obviously have to discuss the launch issues. This was definitely one of the weaker launches in terms of actually being able to play the game for a good amount of people. There were tons of honeydew errors for the first 2 hours, and after those were fixed, it seemed like only certain people were able to log into the game without it crashing non-stop. If you could get into the game like I could, then things went perfectly fine after the honeydew errors were over. But if you couldn't, then you literally could not play, and as of me writing this, I'm pretty sure you still can't, although a patch is coming very soon. The culprit was having too many friends on your friends list. If you have 40 or more people playing Destiny on your friends list at the same time and you try to load Destiny, your game would crash, causing thousands of people to purge that random guy that you met in CSGO 6 years ago who hasn't been seen online for 2 years. But also people were purging people that they actually knew simply to get online, and while it is technically a workaround, it's not really the fix that people are looking for. Bungie is getting that solved, but it's just very unfortunate that it happened. Obviously, they don't want launch issues. No one does, so it did put a damper on things, which sucks. Moving on. Story content. Bungie made fantastic strides in storytelling last season, and I don't expect this season to falter on that front whatsoever. The main story of this season revolves around Mithrax and his splicing capabilities, which we need to fend off the Vex who have cast the city into permanent nighttime status, while also bringing in fallen refugees into the city from House Light. There are a lot of politics at play here. Lakshmi makes a return, Ikora makes a return, Saint is pissed, Crow is still in the field. This is what I've been waiting for with Destiny, finally. Characters all coming together. Discussions happening, things happening. Future War Cult, seeing visions of House Light betraying us. Saint really does not like the Fallen, understandably so, given his history with the Fallen. Politics, drama, strife, decisions needing to be made, story progression, dialogue, exposition, who's gonna be right, who's wrong, where do we go from here? I don't know what else you could really want from the story side of things besides more of it, and maybe a little more cohesion with previous seasons. I fully expect Bungie to continue their great work on this side of the game, and I look forward to seeing how things turn out week over week. The story component of the game has gone from a complete afterthought to one of the top things I look forward to week over week. The Fallen section of the Helm looks great. I love all the Fallen that are just chilling around the city, especially the ones trying to figure out the vending machine. And I thought utilizing the Scourge of the Past space as a little camp for them was awesome. Let's move to the seasonal gameplay loop. Bungie has more or less taken the Battlegrounds loop and made it a little bit smoother. Battlegrounds, you needed to farm gold, turn that into a medallion, then run Battlegrounds, bonk a chest, and then you got a charge to use in the Umbral Decoder. This time around, you farm some ether, you make a key, and that is your charge. You use the charge in Override, and then you get enough data from completing Override and opening that chest to use at the decoder to focus some engrams. But you also have to use this currency to upgrade the Splicer servitor. But unlike last season, you can infinitely farm for decrypted data, aka the currency that you use to upgrade the Splicer servitor. Bit of a give and take early in the season. I'm definitely struggling with upgrading versus focusing engrams because the weapons this season are getting a lot of praise and I want to start getting some rolls. Later in the season, after you've fully upgraded, it's not going to be as much of an issue, and I do appreciate that I can choose to grind out these upgrades if I want, as opposed to having to wait week over week for the seasonal challenges. Both methods have their merits. The gameplay loop also maintains a similar ratio of seasonal content to core content compared to Season 13, requiring you to play the core for Ether and the seasonal to get the rewards. As for Override itself, I really enjoyed the theming of the experience. A super long time ago, I'm talking D1 launch, I remember expressing to some Bungie developers how cool it would be to have public events be a little bit more than they currently are, referencing the ability to go into a Vex portal to take the fight to them, killing a boss before departing back to Earth or wherever we went. And 6 or 7 years later, this has finally become some form of reality, which is kind of cool. That being said, it does feel a bit like Season 11's event, killing lots of enemies and dunking motes into a tower, although with a couple of extra steps thrown in to change things up a little bit. The side portal during the first part was a nice addition, although sometimes people treat it like the invader role in Gambit, where no one's really sure who's gonna do it, but they're pretty sure it's not gonna be them. Whereas other times, you're lucky to have anyone stay on the outside at all. The second half platforming section is a nice touch, but the final boss leaves a bit to be desired from me personally. Just kind of turns into a chaotic mob, and there's not a whole lot going on. Enemy density was the phrase of Season 13, so how are we looking for Season 14? Are things dense enough in Override? You know, they're close. I think there's just barely enough to go around in the first part of the activity, especially when you split evenly between home team and portal team. I wouldn't mind seeing a splash more enemies show up, though. The boss room definitely does not have enough, minus the finalizer waves, but those aren't exactly the most exciting to fight against. I think that's also part of why the boss encounter doesn't really get me jazzed up. Certain strikes are still suffering from painfully low enemy density. Arms Dealer and Inverted Spire come to mind, but unfortunately, due to the way many of these were built with a lot more running than gunning, I don't really see this getting addressed. Not to take away from the PvP community, but the strike playlist still really needs some juice if I'm going to continue to grind away at it for Ether or any other seasonal activity that comes after it. For any potential new strikes coming up in the Witch Queen, please Bungie, focus on having more gunning than running. Environments are great, but I'd rather have a short strike in terms of distance traveled if it means I actually get to enjoy the gameplay experience. Speaking of guns, Bungie has really heard that feedback from Beyond Light that the community wants more guns. And delivered, they pretty much have. This season is packed with guns, new and old. We have a handful of new perks as well, and while I can't say with 100% certainty that any of them are going to topple reload speed plus damage perk, at least Bungie is trying to shake things up. I'm going to be taking a look into them to see how they all hold up. A lot of people are wondering if Hung Jury is going to hold up as well as it did in D1, and I am here to crush your dreams and say that it probably won't. And that's because in D1, scout rifles were good. The only good scout in D2 is Dead Man's Tale. But I guess we'll see. Speaking of guns, part 2, the seasonal exotic. This sidearm has resulted in many people asking me, am I just not using this right, or is this gun not very good? If you're using the sidearm just as a sidearm that you happen to throw on to do some bounties or get the catalyst done, in PvE anyway, no, I don't think it's very good. However, when combined with sidearm-focused mods and a stasis subclass, there might be a bit more hope for it. I just haven't had the chance to really test that out yet, as I've spent most of my day 2 grinding out the ritual weapon, Null Composure, which took about 20 to 25 activity completions to get. I haven't been hearing the greatest of news from that either, despite it having what can be considered the only reason to use a fusion rifle, Reservoir Burst. Unlike its predecessor though, it is a faster firing fusion, which means it lacks the punch that Loaded Question had. That being said, Plug 1, the current Nightfall fusion, can roll with Burst as well, and can hit a bit harder, so that is something I would also like to investigate as soon as I actually get one to drop. I just got all 3 of the exotic boots for the season. We're going to talk about those in another video soon. One quick thing, apparently Sleeper Simulant was supposed to get the buff that Linear Fusions got in the patch, but it did not actually receive it. This will be fixed, but not in time for the launch of Vault of Glass. Just wanted to put that out there. Kind of unfortunate. The seasonal mods continue to develop on elemental wells, yet another thing we will discuss during the season. I like the new additions, even if you do need to play buddy-buddy with them, linking the elements together for the greatest effect. I wasn't the most impressed with elemental wells last season, and my current vibe is that the additions still probably won't do enough to make me actually want to use them due to their stricter trigger conditions, but, you know, we're going to do some testing and see. I'm very excited to start diving into the seasonal artifact mods, though. Some of the mods here are nuts. Sundering Blast was making quick work of overloads in the 1280 version of the Nightfall, which I realize isn't saying much, but I am very much looking forward to testing them all out. So far so good then, yeah? Season 13 was good, Season 14 a lot like Season 13, therefore, good season. Well, I would be lying if I didn't say things were feeling a little too familiar. The upgrade grid on the Splicer server is outstaying its welcome at this point, and with my belief that this season will be hitting similar cadences as the last season, that familiarity is probably going to lead to some shorter play times on my end, as I already feel like I know how the season is going to play out, maybe minus the story components. With PvP still being infected with stasis, something that has been acknowledged by Bungie very recently but will never really go away, and with Gambit still literally just being Gambit, the audacity of Gambit, it can feel tough to stay invested in playing Destiny outside of Tuesdays as a PvE player, especially considering the state of the Strike playlist. Stagnant is the most generous word I can give the playlist. Of course, we still have the weekly Pinnacle mission coming, which I'm sure will be very solid, and I am looking forward to the story it will tell. Speaking of Pinnacles, oh my god, Datto, these transitions are insane. Bungie has made an initially questionable move to remove Pinnacles from Deepstone Crypt, thus removing half the reason people ran it in the first place, the other half being weapon rolls. Instead, VOG will become the Pinnacle-giving raid activity upon its release. Look, historically speaking, we've really only had one raid be relevant when it comes to rewarding the highest level loot in the game, Pinnacle loot. I understand. The only time we've had multiple raids rewarding max level items is Age of Triumph in D1, but that was more of a celebration than anything else. Originally, I had this whole big rant, and don't worry, there's still a rant in this video, it's coming up. And I think the reason I was initially reacting the way that I was is because this is technically a new situation. A D1 raid is replacing a D2 raid as the Pinnacle raid site. And I also think part of that reaction was due to the fact that because VOG is an old raid, people assumed that both Deepstone Crypt and Vault of Glass were going to reward Pinnacles, and that is a failure on the community's end to some degree. We shouldn't assume. It is expected when a new expansion comes out that the new raid will replace the old raid, but now we have an old raid replacing a new raid, which just kind of feels weird. And Vault of Glass is free for everyone, whereas Deepstone Crypt is paid. So we're rotating a paid raid out for a free one. The failure on Bungie's end is, yet again, a lack of communication as to why they opted for this path, why they made the decision that they made. There was not a single mention of Vault replacing Deepstone Crypt as the Pinnacle raid site in any post that I can recall. And if there was a mention, then I apologize ahead of time. I gladly eat my words. I don't know how many times I need to ask, but Bungie, for F's sake, explain things. Don't spring this kind of stuff on the community. God. Explain these decisions. Always explain these kinds of things. I don't understand why this is such a difficult concept. Not even a mention in the patch notes. Like, come on, man! This is a bit of a new situation here. A tiny little heads up to clarify this would save so much headache. Ultimately, I still think it would be a good idea at some point to get all of the raids in rotation so that they can all potentially become pinnacle options, but that's been suggested for I don't know how long now, so I'm not exactly the most hopeful. Thankfully, leveling this season is only 10 levels instead of 50, and VOG only requires 1300 upon its release, so it's not like you need to be 1320 by the time VOG launches to participate. But as we've discussed in the past, leveling is not exactly Destiny's strong suit, nor has it been for a long time. As we've discussed, we level for what reason exactly? To get to a high enough level to run GM Nightfalls to grind out a title that we already have? Or to grind out a gilded title that lasts for 3 weeks? Or maybe it's to max out in trials. That's it. I really don't see the harm in having both of these raids give pinnacles. The grinders are gonna grind, Bungie. There's people who are already 1320 base. Leveling in its current form does not need to be a restrictive thing, in my opinion. The only reason I see this move being a thing is simply to keep pinnacle leveling at the same speed as it was, despite it being a very empty experience. What would have been the issue with having 2 pinnacle rewarding raids? Because I feel like we're in F it territory with leveling. Part of the issue is also that leveling is functional enough that it's not really a big problem on the game, and that there are more other pressing things that need attention. I don't see leveling really getting addressed in a significant way for a bit as a result. Sorry, this whole thing probably should have just been its own video, but it's here. What are you gonna do? And now we come to the both most and least significant thing of the season: armor synthesis. Avoiding the elephant in the room for like 8 seconds. The revamp of the shader system is great. The UI is very nice for the customization menu. All we need now are some in-game loadouts or some sort of marking system to keep track of our loadouts in-game, and we're golden. I'm very glad to see armor synthesis in the game in some form after all of this time. But Bungie has almost gone out of their way to make armor synthesis almost as difficult as it could possibly be without having to spend any money. First, let me just explain the actual process. You gain synth strands by killing stuff. Once you get 150 strands, you can buy a bounty. You complete that bounty, which gives you 100 rigid synth cord, which you can use at the loom to turn into synth weave, which you use to unlock an ornament in your customization menu. Simple. It has been discovered that apparently there is an internal timer with regards to how often you can get synth strand to drop from enemies. That timer is 2 minutes. So every 2 minutes, you will be able to get another strand from a kill. If you recall from the previous video, I said I got 4 strand in a strike, and that matches up pretty well with that timer. You need 150 strands to get a bounty, which means you need to play for 300 minutes. That's 5 hours minimum to get a bounty, and that 5 hours assumes you do nothing else with your time other than kill stuff. Then you need to do the bounty itself, which will take a little while, especially if you're unlucky enough to get the Kill 40 Champions bounty from Vanguard. So that's 50 hours to get 10 bounties on 1 character, 150 hours to get 30 bounties across 3 characters, plus the time it takes to do those bounties. You're looking at around a week of in-game active playtime, 168 hours of active playtime to get all of your ornaments that Bungie will give you for free in a given season. Or you can spend that cash at the Eververse. Man, I just can't help but laugh at this. They literally made it the most restrictive a system like this could possibly be. Like, I get that people are mad at the cap on ornaments. I get it. And I'm hoping to get Bungie to bend on some of those aspects of it. But my effing God. Who at Bungie thought this was going to go over well? Who? Well, I guess the goal wasn't for it to go over well. The goal seems to be drive people up a wall to the degree that they just give in and buy it from the store. In that case, whoever designed this, you're promoted because you've clearly done your homework. It's a good thing you gave out those 10 freebies, because I don't know who's going to have the patience to grind out the 10 they'll get access to during a season. Like, not only is this capped, but even the time you can actively spend on getting the materials in the first place is capped. I get that this isn't supposed to be something you actively farm, it's just something that's supposed to happen in the background while you play, but that doesn't make it feel any less terrible when it is explained out loud. What is the big deal about letting people get some ornaments faster? Why is that such a big deal? You don't even have shareholders, Bungie! There's no holders of shares, there's no shareholders to give a remote about average active player times. What is the problem? I will tell you what the problem is. It's money. Because if they let people easily get their 10 ornaments per character per season, those people might be fulfilled enough and not be tempted to spend money at the Eververse. But if you get through a season and realize you only got 3 or 4, well, now that silver is looking mighty shiny. And here's the best part. We get to rationalize all of this by saying it has no impact on your actual gameplay in terms of power or anything like that. Bravo, Bungie! You've outdone yourselves on this one. You know what the really gross thing is, too? There's always a way that they can justify these things. Armor synthesis is slow. It doesn't impact your gameplay. Like, yeah, you're right, but also, God, I hate it! Not to mention that there's a couple of shaders in the collections tab right now that say complete VOG to purchase in the Eververse store. I'm sure that's going to go over really well too. We'll talk about that when the time comes in case things change. Eververse non-negotiable, everyone. Non-negotiable. Overall, like I've said, I think Season 14 will feel very similar to Season 13, hitting all of those same kinds of beats and cadences. I think there is more good than there is bad. It's just that those 1 or 2 bad are hitting a lot harder than the other mostly good stuff. The activity isn't too bad, the weapons are good, the perks are neat, the seasonal mods are neat, the story stuff is great, VOG is probably going to be fun, everyone's looking forward to those VOG weapons, Expunge will probably be fun. But they say that familiarity breeds contempt. And I worry that not enough shakeups will lead to stagnation. I imagine Tuesdays are still going to be hopping, but I'm worried about all the other days of the week. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.